Hello, my name is Antonio Newman Jr. This is my presentation for SPEX660 Data-Driven Decision Making. My problem statement is the National Football League skill position players on offense are more likely to receive lower body injuries playing on artificial synthetic turf football fields compared to natural grass football fields. This is important because the health and safety of the players is supposed to be the number one priority of the NFL. At least that's what they say, but we'll see through my findings if that's what they really believe. So my theory is that NFL skill position players are injured at a higher rate on artificial turf fields. Okay, so here are some of my key findings / my recommendations. Here's the chart for it. My first one. This shows the percentage of natural grass versus artificial turf, and it shows that from my data set, 43% of players were injured on artificial turf versus 57% on natural grass. But despite my data showing more injuries occurring on natural grass surfaces compared to artificial turf surfaces, I still believe the National Football League should make the switch to all natural grass playing surfaces for practices and games. I come to this conclusion not only because of my data, but because of statements made by the NFLPA. The NFLPA is the National Football League Players Association for people who don't know. The NFLPA stated, based on NFL injury data collected from 2012 to 2018, not only was the contact injury rate for lower extremities higher during these practices and games held on artificial turf, NFL players consistently experienced a much higher rate of non-contact lower extremity injuries on turf compared to natural surfaces. Specifically, players have a 28% higher rate of non-contact lower extremity injuries while playing on artificial turf. In simple terms, players believe natural grass surfaces absorb the force of their movements better than artificial turf surfaces do. This means on artificial turf surfaces, your ankles, legs, and knees absorb more of the force from your movements, which is harmful for players. Here's another chart of my key findings. This is the percentage of players injured on artificial turf for all positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. It also shows percent injured on natural grass. It then also shows the total number of injuries in my data set. I had a very large data set. Okay, so the strengths and weaknesses of my analysis. Okay, one of my biggest strengths of my analysis is the sheer amount of data I used. There were thousands of injuries that I accounted for in my analysis. Another strength was the amount of variables that related to injuries in my data set. Consequently, this gave me a very good sample size of the type of injuries that occurred on both playing surfaces. Another strength was the volume of data. I was able to narrow the injury data to analyze the impact on NFL offensive skill position players. Another strength was the number of research articles that supported my theory that NFL offensive skill position players are more likely to be injured on artificial turf surfaces than natural grass surfaces. Finally, the dataset had variables for the weather, which also plays a factor in injuries. The weakness of my dataset is that in the NFL, there are more natural grass playing surfaces than artificial turf surfaces. And also, there was no indicator of how many games per weekly schedule were played on grass and artificial turf. This meant that the data that I had would be skewed towards more injuries being on natural grass than artificial turf because of the fact that there are more games being played on natural grass. The NFL has 30 individual stadiums, and 13 of those stadiums are artificial turf. So it is true that my data showed more injuries on natural grass, but my data was unable to show by percentages the number of injuries based upon the games played on each surface. So I think that's very important, that even though my data didn't show what I wanted it to, I still believe that my theory is correct. And here are the references that I used for my analysis. I appreciate everybody who listened to my presentation. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Goodbye.